Hello. Welcome back, everybody. You all look very refreshed from your week off. And I hope you're prepared for the sprint to the finish of our legislative session. In the days before transmittal, legislators were hard at work to move bills across from the other chamber. I want to take a minute to praise legislators for their work on bills as they make their way to my desk. I'm optimistic that by working together, we can once again deliver on Montana's priorities. This week is National Agriculture Week and month. It's a week to celebrate the contributions of Montana's farmers and ranchers. I joined members of the Montana agriculture community to sign a proclamation declaring March as National Ag Month. In Montana, agriculture isn't just an industry, it's a way of life. It's early mornings and late nights. It's hard work resulting in tough hands and strong hearts. It's families who generation after generation carry on our proud legacy of not just feeding Montana, but literally feeding the world. Agriculture drives our economy, and food security is national security. As I've traveled the state, I've had the proud honor of visiting many farms and ranches and to stand beside hardworking men and women who make Montana agriculture what it is. And I can tell you firsthand, our farmers and ranchers are resilient. Despite droughts and storms, they feed a growing world. Agriculture isn't just part of Montana, it is Montana. That's why I'll always fight for our ag producers to make sure they have the tools, the resources, and the support they need to do what they do best. Over the last 4 years, our farmers and ranchers have felt the pinch of Joe Biden's affordability crisis. The cost of farm inputs and machineries, gas, and electricity all went up under Joe Biden. Our administration is committed to delivering meaningful relief to this crisis, from homeowners to small business owners to folks who punch a clock to our ag producers. With hardworking Montanans in mind, we're once again prioritizing historic business equipment tax relief, eliminating this tax burden for more small businesses, family farms, and family ranches. These businesses are the backbone of our economy, making critical investments that support other businesses, create good-paying jobs, and expand opportunities for Montanans. Unfortunately, the business equipment tax forces businesses, including family farms and ranches, to take resources which they would have otherwise used to invest in their operation and create jobs, to pay an annual tax on all of their equipment and machinery they need to operate. Even worse, businesses are required to pay the tax regardless of whether they make a profit or even use the machinery. While everyone knows I'm not a fan of taxes, this is a really, really bad one. So what is the business equipment tax? For farmers, it's an annual tax on their tractors. It's an annual tax on every combine they own. For dentists and doctors, it's an annual tax on their machines, even on their instruments. For restaurant owners, it's an annual tax on their grills, even their knives, forks, and spoons. For a carpenter, welder, plumber, or home builder, it's an annual tax on all of their tools. We should call this tax what it is. It's a tool tax. It's an annual sales tax on equipment, and it never goes away. Taxing critical business equipment makes it harder to grow a small business. It disincents investments. It's a wet blanket on job creation. Thankfully, working with then Representative Kazmaier, we've made real progress in my first term reducing this tax for Montanans. When I first took office, the exemption from the tax on equipment was only for $100,000 per small business. If you were a farmer in 2021, you didn't have to pay the tax if your equipment was worth less than $100,000. But I've met many farmers, and they'll tell you their equipment is well north of $100,000. In fact, a single tractor costs more than that, and a single combine is closer to $1 million. We reformed the tax on equipment to give farmers, ranchers, and small business owners some relief from this burdensome, unnecessary tax. When we looked at overhauling this tax, I found a reliable partner in Josh Kazmaier. In 2021 and 2023, we worked with then Representative Kazmaier to increase the exemption to $1 million for each small business. As a result of our efforts, we've managed to cut taxes for businesses, taking more than 5,000 small businesses, farms and ranches off the business equipment tax roll entirely. But we're not done yet. We need to go farther. My budget proposed increasing the exemption for the tax on business equipment from $1 million to $3 million. Introduced this year by Senator Kazmaier is Bill 322. It makes this reform a reality. By further reforming the burdensome tool tax, another 700 businesses, farms, and ranches will come off the tax rolls. Montanans sent us here to cut taxes and expand opportunity. And cutting this tax does exactly that. Let me share with you why this is so important. Yesterday, I had the privilege of visiting Circle View Farms in Fort Benton with Senator Kazmaier. Circle View Farms is operated by Brent Hanford and his family. In fact, when I was talking to Brent, he didn't mince words when he was talking about this tax. He said it was, quote, a joke. He expressed his frustration, saying that he had already paid taxes on his hard-earned money, which he then used to purchase equipment, and then his equipment is taxed again and again and again, each and every year. It's taxed even if it sits in his barn, or if he uses it once or twice a season, or not at all. The tax takes money he would otherwise use to hire additional help or purchase new machinery to increase efficiency. Instead, he says he has to factor that tax in when he's making decisions about his operation. As he said, it's a joke. And just like any tax a farmer or rancher or small business owner has to pay, he has to consider passing those costs on to his consumers. This is the only place it can come from. There is no other source of revenue. If we're serious about addressing the affordability crisis and passing conservative reforms, reducing the business equipment tax should be a top priority. That's why I'm glad that the Senate Taxation Committee plans to hold a hearing on Senate Bill 332 next Thursday. And with our continued progress on this bill and reducing income and property taxes, I'm optimistic that we're doing exactly what Montanans sent us here to do. Reduce taxes, address the affordability crisis, and make it easier for Montanans to make ends meet. With that, I'd be happy to take some questions, and I would just ask that you, as you state your question, please state your name and identify your news outlet. Yes?
Yeah, Eric Beecher from Montana Free Press. Can you talk a little about you've seen like several of these, you mentioned you've seen several of these business equipment taxes go through over the past, under your administration and prior administrations. What do you see as your long-term goal for this tax? Is it to eliminate it entirely or eventually get the exemption to a certain threshold? Like, where do you want to be, when you're done?
Yeah, so I think football games are won with 3 to 5 yard plays. That's why we've taken an incremental approach here. Getting it to $3 million would be a huge step that would get us almost 5,700 businesses would no longer have to pay it. My goal would be to have no small business, farm or ranch in the state have to pay this. If you actually got it to a higher number, the number of companies that would be subject to it would be dramatically reduced, primarily large industrials. But the goal is to get all the small businesses off this tax, because not only is it a burden for them making investments decisions, it's also an administrative nightmare, because every year you have to go catalog all your equipment, predict its market value, calculate the tax. That's for restaurants, that means they have to count every fork, spoon, and knife every year, every chair, every table, all their kitchen equipment. It's a burden that even if they don't qualify it, even if they are under the exemption, they still have to go through the process of calculating whether or not they owe it or not. This is an administrative burden that small businesses should not have to bear.
Just to clarify, so it sounds like you don't have a particular number in mind in the long run, but don't want to get rid of it entirely. You want to leave it in a threshold where large industrial companies would still pay?
I would say that's fair.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Yes.
Victoria Newspapers. I think now that 231 is still kind of moving, House Bill 231 is kind of still moving through the legislature, there started to be conversations about rebates possibly coming into the picture, just because maybe DOR is not going to have a long enough runway to implement that legislation, even though you've expressed desire to have it pass long ago. I'm curious what you make of another round of rebates generally, and then also how you may like to see those be administered.
Okay, so thank you for the question. It's about homestead rate reduction and rebates, and what's our view given where we are today, just to rephrase. So property taxes are too high. Montanans expect permanent relief. We went through this bipartisan property task force. The homestead rate reduction, we believe, is the best way to do this on a permanent basis. It's going to reduce Montana homeowners' tax bill about 15%, small businesses about 18%. It'll also help renters. So that is still our primary vehicle that we want to see enacted. The legislature's making good progress. The clock is ticking. There's a number of other proposals in the legislature, including rebates and other things. I think for me, the thing we can't do is take Montanans' income tax and use that to subsidize property taxes. We have to keep those two buckets separate. But we'll consider any bill that gets to my desk, and we'll see what the legislature comes up with.
Thanks.
Yeah, Seaborn.
The Seaborn Larson Family Newspapers, the state page.
And it's really encouraging to see you guys mix and mingle here today instead of sitting all together as a group.
The state pay plan's up for third reading in the Senate today. It does have the legislative pay raises involved. And you had some pretty strong language in your veto letter that last year. I'm wondering if the sort of smaller bump compared to last year's proposal, if you're more amenable to that raise now, or if you are more firm on no pay raises for legislators.
Well, we need to get a pay raise for our state employees. I think I think the agreement we came to with the unions was fair. They were good partners in that negotiation. That's what we put that forward. We put the pay raise for the legislators in the bill as well. But ultimately, any of our proposals are put in front of the legislature and they make the final decision. Jonathan?
Yes, Jonathan Andarian from the Montana Television Network. I was wondering, to go back to the business equipment tax, and you're talking specifically about especially ag businesses going to be affected by that. I wonder if you see this as particularly important, because I know there have been some ag people who maybe are concerned about if the property tax changes that we're doing, maybe that may have an impact on ag property taxes particularly. Is that a reason maybe particularly that you feel like this is necessary, or?
So the question is there any interplay here with the business equipment tax and property taxes? I mean, every tax is a burden on the person that pays for it. I believe that our tax system has to be fair in the way we do it. I do believe Montana as a state has a vested interest to see land stay in production agriculture. That's why there is some legislation progressing through to give some advantage for production ag. But this taxing farm equipment on an annual basis is, as in the words of Brent yesterday, he actually called it double taxation. It's the penalty that keeps on giving. And we need to reform it to get our farms and ranches and Main Street businesses really off this punitive tax that disincents investment.
Do you have, do you have any idea roughly off the top of your head what the state revenue impact would be for this change?
We can get you that number. And I should say, in our property taxes primarily support local government, county roads, sheriff, K through 12 education, and the bill does include a general fund component to backfill the local counties to keep them whole. We've done that every time we've done this reduction in business equipment tax. In general, property taxes pay for local expenses, income taxes pay for state expenses. We want to keep that separation, but if we're going to take something away from the counties, I believe we need to keep them whole. But we can get you the number on the, it's in the fiscal note, but we can share it with you. Yeah.
To follow up on that last point, that you say you're using general fund income tax dollars to backfill, so there's a property tax, so there's a property tax system, which you're hesitant to do with residential. Could you kind of talk about how your philosophy, squares that circle?
Well, I believe this business equipment tax is probably one of the most regressive taxes we have in the state. You can't eliminate all taxes, but we want to see farms and ranches be able to invest in their operation without this penalty. And we're willing to take the hit in that case. On the property taxes, that's a bright line for us. We don't think we should be taking somebody's income tax payments and sending it to a county that may not have been as fiscally responsible as the state's been. So that's the difference in my mind. Do we have any questions online? Okay. Yes.
Blair Miller with the newspapers.
You're even in a separate row there. This is really.
I was gonna stay back here, yeah, so President Trump's expected to announce sort of cuts to the Department of Education today. Still kind of unclear what those exactly look like, but wondering what kind of conversations you're having with the superintendent about what that might look like here before you see it, I guess.
Well, I think President Trump's keeping his commitment to the American people. As I understand it, and we don't have the details yet, it'll be later today, but in Montana, about 10% of our funding is federal. 10% of our school funding is federal. And my understanding is that this funding will be turned into a block grant rather than coming to us with a bunch of strings attached to it. I think most education decisions should be made at the state and local level rather than by bureaucrats in Washington. So by eliminating the bureaucracy, which is really what President Trump is proposing, we'll have a better ability to serve the students and our schools in Montana through block grants. Any other? Yes.
Zeke Boyd, Montana Free Press. So the Montana State Warden took a month and a half leave. Can you explain why he took the leave and if there was any wrongdoing associated with his tenure?
I don't have all the details here. This is a personnel matter. My understanding was there was a third-party investigation, and he was cleared. I don't have all the details. So,
An investigation, do you know into what?
I don't have the details.
Understood.
Yes, Seaborn.
About halfway through the session now, the Republican judicial reform agenda has been sort of fleeting, considering I think there's only been one bill made to your desk. Partisan judicial elections is still alive in one bill. I think there's another LC floating around, but I think with 11 bills already killed off, I guess I'm wondering if you see kind of that number getting smaller and smaller as something to be discouraged about with the agenda as it's had some issue passing through the Senate. Or if you're seeing the legislature just sort of narrowing its priorities?
Well, I was pretty clear in my State of the State that we need judicial reform. I personally think we have partisan judicial elections, only they don't have to actually designate. So I've been an advocate for partisan judicial elections because we have them. They're just only in they were just missing the affiliation. The legislature's doing a lot of good work, and it's not over till it's over. So let's stay tuned, and I'll consider the bills as they come to me.
One thing Chief Justice Corey Swanson had said in his State of the Judiciary is that he urged lawmakers not to pass partisan judicial elections. Did that surprise you at all, him making that recommendation to the...
I mean, he's entitled to his opinion. I support Chief Justice in many areas. This is a point where we disagree. Good. Yes?
We're getting into the final days of appropriations going through HB2 and starting to see the agency presentations. I think E came in pretty close to where you requested. What are your budget people telling you in terms of where the legislature's at based off of your ask, I guess?
I mean, we have a collaborative relationship. You know how the process works. The governor and the executive branch puts a budget together. We give it to the legislature. Ultimately, they are the appropriators. They are going to make changes. They're going to put their fingerprints on it. We get it back. We have one last opportunity with the budget, really just to either approve or not approve it. But I respect the role that they have and the oversight that they provide for the executive branch. And we're encouraged by the discussions that have been going on.
Are you happy with how it seems like things are coming out of appropriations, at least based off of your request?
You know, there's happy, that's an emotional word. I would just say that we have a good collaborative relationship. I make it a point of being very accessible to the legislators. I'll be meeting with one right after this. I meet with leadership every week, both minority and majority, or virtually every week. And we have open dialogue. And we respect the fact that we have different roles. You know, they come up with their ideas. I have to actually implement them. You know, so sometimes we have some perspectives that are different than theirs, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Yes?
Well, another Senator Casimir bill is a child tax credit, I believe. Is that something that has your support?
We'd have to see what the final bill looks like. Good. Yes, Jonathan.
Governor, I was wondering, Senator McGillivray's bill today up on the Senate floor about redirecting marijuana tax money, and I know that your budget proposal had a plan, and I think that his is not exactly the same, but it does remove some of the conservation funding, which I think was in your budget. Have you had a chance to look at his bill, and are you kind of open to that version of some of the redirection?
Well, we'll have to see what the final bill. I'm not going to talk specifically about a bill because I don't know what form it would be in when it gets to me. I will say that we've made it a priority to take a portion of the marijuana revenue to make it available. If we're going to make a Schedule I drug available to the people of Montana, that's what the people of Montana wanted. I didn't support it, but we're implementing their will. I think we should be using a significant portion of that revenue for addiction recovery and mental health issues, which is what we've prioritized. But we'll have to take a look at the bill if it gets to us. Okay, last question. Anybody? We're good, thanks. We'll see you next week.